Still eating lunch.
Sure.
So they changed to a 48-page format for the Conan the King series.
Daylight savings time.
There's that up tomorrow, is it?
Yeah, that's right. So I think it'll be a little friendlier for you because we're going ahead 1 hour.
They'll make the next meeting 11:45 Melbourne time
Sure.
rather than 12:45. That means the next Kenneth Smith meeting will be back to 5 a.m. for me.
Yeah.
You sort of, I think they were struggling to fill the 48 pages. Because there seemed to have been demands made upon them by Marvel to go longer. I mean, traditionally, a lot of comics are very short in their storytelling. Might go for a few pages.
Um. Yeah. Well, you might be right.
The illustration quality is pretty good. It's generally pretty good. Uh, but you get the feeling they didn't really know how to approach Conan as a king.
Well, these aren't the original Robert E. Howard stories. These are
Oh,
uh
yeah, I'm well aware of that.
fan vote or something.
Howard only alluded some features of Conan the King.
Copy the law. Done.
Of course, there's a feature about the whole Conan character which doesn't make terribly much sense. Can you figure out what that is? Besides the fact that he's a fantasy figure.
No, I'm not sure.
Well, the Village People had the concept in their song YMCA. See, Conan is pretty much a lone wolf, which is what can happen to a character now and again. But other than for the sabbatical, it's not something that you can do all the time. ultimately to get
Mm.
somewhere depends on cooperating with others.
Mm.
Now, when we had the thief Conan, fair enough. He was a thief. He banded together with other thieves to continue in his riotous lifestyle. As a fairly young figure, that might have made some sense at the time, but eventually to have larger plans and schemes, you need cooperation with others. And of course, there are cases where he gets big gangs, but storytelling wise, even when he's in the big gangs, he's still got very much the lone sort of wolf character. I mean, with Conan the King, he ends up repeatedly in dungeons. I mean, how many dungeons can you survive before the bad guy's going to do you in? How many escapes can you do?
Right.
So the trouble with the Conan comics is, of course, they're so formula driven, and I think Howard was better at the formula. I mean, as you mentioned, there was a formula: witches, wizards, kings, princesses, and girls of all descriptions.
Mhm.
But yeah, they're sort of struggling to do him as a king, which is something they could have done, but they're struggling to mature Conan. He's still the lone wolf teenager inside, which it wouldn't have lasted. He couldn't have lasted as a king
Oh,
unless he matured more.
right.
I mean, they start off, they're trying to get him out of the throne room where he could do his typical Conan adventures. So they're really falling back on Conan as he was. And the other thing, with the 48 pages, this seems to be a bit of a weakness, but not so much when it was in the shorter format. But they could have expanded on minor characters more, even the most minor character, the peasants digging mud in Monty Python, the old woman bashing cats. They could have just grabbed any any character that was somehow involved in the story and expanded a bit on them because now they got the room, but they don't really do that. Well, at least not in the issues that I've looked at. I mean, I think well, I got up to issue. Looked at issue 11,
Wow.
and
Okay.
that starts off with he's got a courtroom scene. I mean, he's been a king. And you had a little bit of seeing him in the courtroom, but this is the first one that has a proper courtroom scene where there's some intrigue. He's sitting there with his queen. There's some issue up. He walks along. There's an attempted assassination. So, but this is something that could have been there from the very start. But so you can tell they struggled with the idea of a king. 48 pages would at least give you time to flesh out the characters a bit better.
Sure.
Which don't think I've looked at this one. The Ring of
This is issue 5. I think this is where we got up to last time.
Oh, okay,
So it
right. Yeah,
should have been the start. Yeah, these are L. Sprague de Camp's novels after Howard passed.
well, I don't know the novel, but this is the comic taking the story. Well, this is where one of the courtiers is telling his son some background stories. So this relates to very early in his reign, where Zenobia is kidnapped.
Yeah, by this point they were locked into a pretty solid formula for Conan.
It sort of doesn't make that much sense that he's continuing to be a lone wolf when he's a flipping king.
Yeah.
Kings, the whole job of a king is dealing with loads of people, not being a lone wolf. Well, if you are a lone wolf as a king, you're not going to last very long as a king, put it that way.
Hmm. Simonson cover here. Yeah, there's some amount of suspension of disbelief you're going to have to extend here. But we've talked about that before in regards to Conan.
Yeah, I've seen better storytelling in comics than this. This is
Sure.
very, I mean, if your key character is a boring barbarian, then you can introduce sub characters that are more interesting. Yeah, it's actually on the theme of barbarians. I was trying to figure out if there's much had been done in comic book versions of the Icelandic sagas, and some of the stories are quite outstanding. Uh, they've survived a long time. They've survived since the Middle Ages, and there are a whole load of sagas, of course, but what we generally know are the very best ones, which outstanding stories.
Right.
Yeah, but nothing much, there is that sort of series which I think they called Icelandic sagas, which has nothing of the depth or the richness of the medieval tales. I did end up chancing across a podcast on one of the Icelandic sagas I didn't know, and of course a lot of them are in Icelandic, but of course I didn't realise the handy feature of translation these days, which I used, which has the unfortunate side of everything being rather Monty Python in terms of translation. As John Cleese said when he was trying to playing a Hungarian trying to speak English with the aid of a book, making claims like "my nipples explode with delight."
Yeah, right.
So you'd see sort of stuff like that in the translation. So it really, you could follow the story, but it was really rough.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, he's going to have a fight with the snow leopard. So he's gone into the Himalayas. He ends up in an eastern kingdom after this one. And he comes across a Yeti, punches the Yeti out with the aid of the sorcerer's signet ring. So he's found some East Asian woman
Yeah.
and he's fighting off a dinosaur of some variety.
Yeah.
And he makes out with her. Obviously, infidelity is only one way in his kingdom.
Right.
Well, I don't know how he's going. Well, that's a rather nice little illustration there. A woman scratched out on the block with chains.
Yeah. John Buscema was a solid meat and potatoes journeyman artist who just turned in solid pages for decades. They were just competent, solid craft with great skill, and he just did it for a long time. And there's something to be said for that.
Looks a bit like Melania Trump.
And this is Conan is probably the thing he's probably best known for, but he worked for quite a number of decades on just about anything you can imagine. And never became like a major superstar, but he's certainly well known and
Oh, right.
well
This
regarded.
is the bit with the god Crom. You just gone past it. Somehow magically he finds himself in a Crom's hall. And Crom not in, even though he's not one of his great followers, he doesn't wish him to be lost to the plans of the evildoers.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Conan freaks in the Melbourne Science Fiction Club who always puzzled me weren't impressed by the movie, which was actually a mistake because despite having a few faults, the Schwarzenegger Conan movies were good pieces of work. But they're just going to criticize every little thing. They hate Arnold Schwarzenegger for starters. You know, this is going back over 40 years. And then in the 2000s, if you wanted to know what a really bad Conan film was like, they did a remake and that was really bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The only problem is, I think, compared to Conan in the stories, Arnold Schwarzenegger was just a little bit too sensitive and intelligent. The thing, of course, is it's always the spectacular.
Hmm.
They can't deal with just an ordinary dramatic episode, or include something a bit more human in it.
Okay, so we crossed past Roy Thomas's reign tenure,
Uh, he left off at a certain point here, did he?
and we're now into Doug Mench's tenure. Actually, with Buscema also dropped away. This is Alan Cooperberg. Okay. Not one of the better Bill Sienkiewicz covers.
A rather alluring Elvira type.
Right.
There's a nice little shot of his castle back there. Just went past it.
No,
What is the city of Aquilonia, is it?
Tarantia?
Oh, right. Capital of Aquilonia. City dominated by the palace of its king. No need to be nervous, girl. King Conan and Queen Zenobia simply wish to question you about the rebel plot to seize the throne. Just speak what you know and speak it truthfully. Well, okay, this is a courtroom scene. This is where it's starting to make sense.
Right.
I don't know what happened to Conan's eye and that. It looks a bit too blacked out. This is uh, this is the reworked comic, isn't it? It's not the uh, original imagery, is it?
Well, this is the digital
Right.
reprinting of these early 1980s comics. If you want to compare the two.
Looks like every girl they have in this is a knockout. I mean, what's this girl? Just some ordinary slave girl, and she's a knockout. What's going on?
Sure.
It's not even an important character.
Sure. Yep, that's par for the course for comics, for mainstream comics.
An attempted assassination. Well, Donald Trump could tell him all about them.
Hmm.
what's his name? Alcimedes. The is I suppose he's alchemist of some variety, wise man.
If if there was a peak for the quality of these Marvel Conan comics, we're definitely past the peak at this point.
Well, they stopped Conan the Barbarian to do Conan the King. And then when they finished with Conan the King, they did a few more issues of Conan the Barbarian. Got took down some. Here's another serving wench, and she's not too bad. Looks a bit like Princess Leia.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure if this is an adaptation of anything or if it's original, but at this point, does it really matter? By now, if you're still reading these Conan comics, you pretty much know what you're signing up for. And those are probably not the main considerations. Uninspired is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, so yeah, I wonder. Looks like Elvira, the Mistress of the Dark, is how's she doing? Kill Conan.
So that how as far as you got to?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, this is
So
a
Elvira is going to show up again, I suppose.
never know. Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of Conan that's been published over the decades.
Okay, Conan the Barbarian ran for 275 issues. Uh, Rightio, so issues 1 to 115. Oh, rightio, so they got up to 239 at some point. Uh, right, so they're doing Conan the King as a separate series. And but they did another 35 issues, so from 240 to 275 after they finished with Conan the King for a couple of years. Probably, yeah. I don't know when they're going to tell the story of how what led up to him becoming king of Aquilonia.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be a backtrack story like we've had with Zenobia's kidnapping, or there was any indications in the original series of Conan the Barbarian that was leading up to Aquilonia.
Right.
And Matolia's phone blew up again last week. She had one of those Samsung uh, Ultras. It was from 2020.
Mm.
Back in 2023, she noticed it started to get hot. And I don't think, yeah, she probably didn't take all the signs, probably it wasn't lasting very long, the charge.
Mhm.
And then one day it started blowing up. And the 2020 models still took an SD. So I gave her an SD and I said, well, do a print of your fixed memory. She doesn't do that. And then the thing completely blows up and stops working. She took it along to a repairman. They replaced the battery, and I think she lost a few phone numbers, but she retained most of her information.
Mhm.
And then about a month ago, I forget what I was telling you this, she started having trouble again. It wasn't charging properly. And she went to another place, looked at it and said, oh, well, maybe they'll go replace the USB connection. And I said, well, while you're down there, get the battery replaced.
Mhm.
But then it starts charging again. Well, actually, he gave her a magnetic charger, and that worked. I think she might have said the USB started charging again. But then after a few weeks, it was all the problems showing up again, and the battery blew up. So he replaced the battery, but hasn't been able to get it to boot up. So she's going to check it out. But first time you had a problem, shame on the universe. Second time the same problem shows up, there's a risk there. Because actually, yeah, a month ago I said, look, and she was working. I said, look, I'll come past the place where you're working, grab the phone off you and take it to the repairman. He said, no, I don't want to trouble you.
Mhm.
So So it's still sitting there. So it's a question because she's, got a lot of, photos and that on the original fixed memory. So it's a question of whether the phone can be started again so she can retain the memory, which is something I expect could be done. But it depends, if they can't get the phone started properly, then she's going to have to, it might be expensive for somebody to get to the memory. Actually, when you look at it, she could have bought maybe a 256 gigabyte uh, USB and just could have just done a print with a USB, which is a little bit pricey, 256, but probably worth it. But it's the same thing showing up. I wish he had told me better what was going on. But then even before then, I said, take it to the repairman and get him to check it out, replace the battery. After about 2 years, you might as well just replace the battery anyway. And she got another one. She got a 25 model. and there was a computer store which had a good deal. In Australia, you like these days, you're paying about 2,200 for a Samsung Ultra, but this computer store had last year's going out for 1,500, so I said go and grab that one. The repairman was trying to sell her the new one, which was coming along, which was going to be about 2,200, and then should be without a phone for about, well, it should be still without a phone, should be without a phone for over a week, because it's not until Wednesday that Samsung's releasing the new phone. I just don't understand. It just seems something like that she just doesn't learn. Have you ever come across where people they've made they've they've encountered the error once, and then the same thing happens the next time?
Right.
It's well,
Right.
it's a story of Conan the Barbarian. He seems to be always fighting wizards, dinosaurs, and finding the wrong sort of woman sometimes, so he doesn't seem to learn all that well. So it's a question whether it's really that much worth continuing with Conan the Barbarian, unless it's to explore
Yeah.
maybe elements of the story, how it evolved over time.
I'll I'll leave that to you. What do you think? I mean, as we said last time, we leapfrogged over quite a lot to jump ahead to get to Conan the King. We could either keep going with Conan the King, or we could go back to where we left off with the regular Conan series.
Oh yeah, I don't have any great plans of going through the entire comic collection.
Okay, so if you like, this could be a good stopping point, and we did what we didn't need to do with Conan, you're saying? Although I do have one thing I would want to point out. If this is the it for Conan, okay, so the one thing I want to point out before we end, though, is so the idea was, of course, these were the Marvel Comics 1970s adaptations of the original Robert Howard stories, novels. And of course, those were written, whenever they were written, 1920s, weren't they? Robert E. Howard wrote those.
The original novels, yeah.
Yeah, the original novels. So,
30s would have been 30s, I
30s?
think.
Yeah, I think 30s, sure. Okay, so the idea is, well, of course, that doesn't mean they're the only people who can do adaptions. So what I'm saying is there have been other teams and other publishers who have also done Conan the Barbarian adaptations.
Oh, you mean other
If
comics?
Yeah, if you're interested in comics, yeah. Here
Well, this Marvel set was the big
in the
and most
1970s, yeah.
important. Yeah.
Do you see this? This is actually a completely different creative team and a completely different publisher doing again adaptations of the original Howard
Stories, right?
Conan novels. This one is Red Nails and Queen of the Black Coast. But these are new creative teams and these are new adaptations of the exact same Conan original Howard stories. So this is what I wanted to point out to you. This is, another take on the same stories, which I don't mind if you're interested. Are you interested?
Uh, I suppose we could give it a go at least once. It looks a bit curious.
As you see, this is a completely different.
Modern.
It's
Uh,
much more modern, yeah. A bit, yeah.
yeah, well, we could try this one. Yeah, it'd be a bit
If you All right,
curious.
if you're interested, sure. Let's. So I'll do this for April.
So which company made this one?
It's the same. It's the same stories. It's the same. This is Red Nails and Queen of the Black Coast. This is a company called Ablaze Publishing, and the creators are Jean-David Morvan and Pierre Allary.
And of course, now we'd be working on Epstein, the comic, wouldn't we? Like I said, I'm amazed that they haven't done proper comic versions of the Icelandic sagas. I mean, they're fairly famous.
Yeah, I'd have to do some research. I don't know of any off the top of my head.
Yeah, I did a
It'd be
little search.
surprising.
There is that thing called the Vinland sagas, which is pretty
We did
old.
that years ago. Yeah. Well, we did the first volume years ago.
Yeah, I was listening to one podcast where they were discussing one of the stories I haven't read. And as I said, I'd look for a translation. It's not too bad a story, actually. It's about I think they start off in Norway. They have some trouble there. The family goes to Iceland. They have a son who becomes a poet and is extremely sarcastic. And he's enamored of a certain maiden, but he never really proposes to her. So dad decides to find somebody else as a suitor. This doesn't please him at all. So it's an interesting dilemma that you have this character whose lifetime is dominated by this passion for this woman, but he could have just proposed to her. Whether what was holding him back, maybe there was some other circumstance. He goes to Norway and he becomes a henchman for Olive Tryggvason, the guy who converted Norway to Christianity, or at least the first time they tried it. It's about his conversion to Christianity. He sends him out to torture and maim pagans who refuse to convert to Christianity. It ends up remarkable that he's sent out to blind the guy for not converting. But he's actually a bit kind and he leaves him with one eye. He only blinds him in one eye. And the guy was quite thankful. Oh, it's very kind of you that you only blinded me in one eye rather than both eyes. So it's just storytelling like this, which is from the Middle Ages, and it's there's good stories, and this story is just that slightly bit outrageous, but it's still a good story. It was a podcast, so a couple of jokers were just talking about the story during the podcast, and they found it rather amusing. Well, actually, I'll put it in the Facebook. Oh, there's something good for the Facebook. Nice little story about the Comanche for all those, Russo fans out there that think all native peoples are the good fairies. A few tales about the Comanches should cure them of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so gets into a bit of a description of what the sort of tortures they like to do, and to get up in society. Well, what sort of torture can you come up with? Trying to find. Oh, that's it. Send that one through.
Powerful in their own right. Like, three tribes are particularly feared for their unmatched ferocity.
Yeah, the saga of Hallfred the Troublesome.
I'm willing to bet there's something out there. There's got to be, but I don't know of any off the top of my head.
Yeah, we got the very famous ones like Niall saga, the Laxdalia saga, uh,
I'll do.
Gisley saga. I've read them. These the pick the cream of the crop of Icelandic sagas are outstanding stories. They are top fiction. Well, it's supposed to be based on real events. Yeah, the saga of Hallfred the Troublesome. You might want to, if you ever have time, listen to that podcast. It's rather amusing. We're having a bit of a laugh at his story. Oh, that's right. He winds up back in Iceland and he has sex with his old flame, which doesn't please her husband at all. They end up challenging each other to a duel, but the ghost of King Olive the Christian keeps on appearing, as they say, like a force ghost from Star Wars, telling him, "No, make peace with this man. Don't have a duel with him." And so he tells them all, "Well, I've just had a interview with the force ghost of King Olive, the Christian, who is now dead, and he said, yeah, don't go through with the duel." Oh yeah, everyone agrees. Uh, that one's still downloading. This system's a bit slow. Ah, it made it. Just made it now. Heroes of the Mind.
Sort of comic we used to do, and we'll briefly return to those sorts of, at least for a small respite.
My name is Karl Marx. I was once nicknamed the Devil. Okay. Suppose to be a bit curious.
Just a nice revisit for the sorts of comics we used to do.
Well, I can appreciate something which is, about, sort of reference grade material rather than complete fiction. Of course, a lot of reality's close to complete fiction anyway, but so yeah, you sent me a video on Epstein, the Rothschilds.
I saw that on someone else's Facebook post, and I didn't want to post it onto my timeline, but I also didn't want to lose it. And I don't have anyone else to send it to. And that's the only reason I sent it. I just didn't want to lose it.
The plan was just retention.
Actually, yeah, that was it. I just didn't, and I don't have anybody else I wanted to send it to. But if you read that, you'll notice Carol Quigley
Oh, I
got
didn't read it. That
got a mention in there. Well, his name was dropped, deservedly so.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to make of the whole Epstein saga. I probably would have gone to his parlour and said, "These broads aren't good enough for me. This is not the stuff I saw in James Bond." And I probably would have walked out dissatisfied.
Hmm.
Carol Quigley. So what was it suggesting some involvement at some point? Because
No, it was saying no. It was saying that he got it right. He knew what was going on, and everything he said in his book was correct. That's what it says. Which, as far as I know, yes, he what he said in his book is exactly what's going on. And
uh,
he wrote that well, the book was published in 1968, and he spent 20 years before that writing the thing, and it's worth the read. All
okay,
1,250 pages
I
of it.
get your point. You sort of a bit keen on that guy who wrote War is a Racket. So
Butler, Smedley
so
Butler.
this is volume two of Everything's a Racket.
The
That
Smedley Butler book is a quick read. You can read that book cover to cover in about an hour. Carol Quigley's book is 1,250 pages. That's not a quick read.
which book was it? That
Tragedy and Hope.
Tragedy and Hope. Oh, right, yeah, 1966.
And he spent 20 years researching the thing and writing it. And it was published in 1966. But every sentence in that book is correct.
So you're implying that we're all suffering from the eyes wide shut syndrome, despite the fact that the fingerprints are all over the place with the news and the media choose to ignore it and tell us other stories.
Well, we've talked about this before. It's just I mean, one of the problems is the conversation has just gotten so confused and so muddled that there's really no way to orient yourself correctly anymore.
So, what does the illustrious Rick say about Tragedy and Hope as he looked at it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you ever looked in those directions. Probably not.
Okay, the fallout of World War One, which is a bit Spenglerese there. Spengler was saw World War One as a decisive thing, which is not something I grew up with. You know, I grew up with World War Two being the decisive event, but yeah, it seems to be more of a turn to looking at World War One as being the original event now.
Hmm. I remember it was Fletcher Prouty who said there's a great story about Winston Churchill in the middle of the Blitz while the Nazi bombs were raining down, and he was just very calmly sitting and drinking tea down in the bunker. And then, just as a passing comment to anybody who was there, he just said, "This is what they want," referring to the powers that be, the powers that were above him, the owners of the planet, which he knew about, but no one else does.
Well, it is curious that you know, for a period of time there was this period of international trade, which I when you know, it started really in my you know, my 20s, and everyone was saying that you know, this is a new paradigm, and Fukuyama was saying this is the end of history. And of course, I had just vaguely for a second thought, oh yeah, but then I reviewed history, and you look at the history of world trade going back to the Renaissance, and it's been a period of warfare for figuring out who's the top dog. The top dog then reigns for a relative period of peace and prosperity, and then somebody comes along to challenge the top dog. And it's sort of like you get a changing of the guard. So, the Spanish were the big number, then the French became the big number, then the British, now the Americans. And now the Americans are being challenged by China, whereas the British were challenged by the Germans. But I noticed the step was really in China. China had gained a lot of advantage and gone from a virtually failed state to this enormously, relatively successful country. But weirdly, in the middle of it all, they start to take an aggressive stance. Back around 2010, the aggressive stance started to become obvious. This was a transition. Before then, it had been the great era of international cooperation. Okay, well, if I ever find time, I'll have to give Tragedy and Hope. You have mentioned this book before, of course. I sort of vaguely remember it now.
Yeah.
You've read the whole thing, have you?
No. If you like, we could read it.
We could only do the comic book version. Okay, next week, then David.
And we'll see if Rick cancels at the last possible minute again. I wish he'd get out of that habit, but if he's gonna cancel, do it before at least 2 hours advance notice. At least, but bad for you because you have to wake up early. Although daylight savings time now it's 1 hour later.
Yeah, well, if I had better warning, I could have just stayed in bed because I'll
Yeah.
check the mobile phone to see if there has been a cancellation. But last time I got up a little bit too early and you sent the cancellation, but I was just plodding around. I didn't check the messenger. No, actually,
Yeah, it's
I actually, last few minutes I just went to the meetup page, and then I saw it was set for the next day.
yeah. I mean, when I notify you, it's literally just like a minute after Rick tells me. Yeah, you're the first person I notify, but
It's not a serious tragedy because I don't work, so there's
yeah, right.
no particular big problem in that regard. If it was a person, it works, it'd be probably a thing because you'd be, chewing up their time a bit.
Well, yeah, no one's getting paid for this, and no one's paying money for it, so nothing to complain about. But
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Yeah, I should send that as well to you. There was a little YouTube on Linux and how some guy was trying to create a backdoor in Linux. And I'm making the point that the media has ignored this story. That culminated last year when they got on to the guy. They think it was either somebody in Russia or a group that was operating in Russia or Israel. And if they had gone on for a few more weeks without them getting wise to what was going on, they could have compromised all the Linux systems that were using a particular feature that would have given them control of the Linux systems. But they pointed out, of course, that the people who work there's one guy, some Finnish guy, not the original inventor. I'm not too sure on that, but he does the patches for nothing. He doesn't get paid.
Hmm.
And he sort of, his work is a bit spotty, so he's might be a bit slower or a bit late or something like that. But he's the one that's got all the brains and the know-how how to fix up things with Linux, but he's apparently never been paid a cent. So the whole worldwide system is dependent in some regard on the charity of one guy.
Really? Okay.
I'll send that one to you. I'll send it in the. I think you'll probably find it quite interesting.
Yeah, didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, they said the media's ignored the story, so this is eyes wide shut again. They're only interested in certain types of stories. Yeah, Trump the barbarian. Yep, anything to do with Trump's all pasted all over the place, but or something else or somebody else, but not stuff like that. Oh well, Dave, I'll catch you next time then.